Welcome, wanderers and world builders, to another episode of TTRPGiraffe, the tabletop RPG podcast where dice meets design meets monsters meets mayhem. I'm one of your hosts, Steele, and I'm here with
Me, Kai. Yeah, cannot wait for this episode. It's going to be great. You'll be able to also find me on Instagram, vawizard.kai. Moving on to the next person.
Yeah, that would be me. Hello, everybody. I'm one of your fellow DMs, Doug. You can find me online as a voice actor. You can find me on Twitter at DougglesVO, as well as on the big blue sky at dgvo.social.bluesky, the whole other acronym, but at dgvo. But finishing us off strong,
is me. And hi, everyone. My name's Nate. I'm also a voice actor. You can find me under the name Blizzard Wizard, spelled BLZZRD, WZZRD, on every social media platform, as well as blizzardwizard.com, spelled that exact way. And we got a big one tonight. Tonight, we are going to wrap up our acronym trilogy, and it's a hell of an acronym, boys.
it's a world size.
Yeah, because today we're diving headfirst into the art of world building, from sprawling empires and forgotten ruins to magical lines and political intrigue. We're hoping to explore worlds that feel alive and how you can build one that keeps your players coming back for more. Why don't you take us into the acronym, Nate?
All right, so what better way to remember world building than by the acronym World Build? We'll kind of tackle it how we did last time, especially since this one's so large. We'll go through it letter, and we'll recap it all up at the end. And starting our letter off is W, which wonders in weirdness.
Yeah, one of the most important little quirks and little strange things that set out your world as its own fantasy thing can really help establish your world to the players and make them remember it. So what are we thinking?
You don't want to be setting your whole story in like downtown Chicago today. Like, you want some fantasy, some whimsy, some mystical wonder in your story. Maybe your world, the stars are different, or the clouds are cotton candy or something. Just something that makes it alien, unique, magical, mystical. Other synonyms for these words.
Right, something to help spark imagination for folks. And who knows, maybe it is downtown Chicago, but maybe it's downtown Chicago that has the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in it, or the various strong humanoid anthropomorphic creatures that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has. But gotta have something that draws the imagination out, something that allows people to start, oh, I have an idea, that kind of instance. So some of the examples that people like to be able to do is that your world has gravity that is slightly less, or you have the floating mountains up above. Things like
that
of
reminds
that nature.
me of James Cameron's Avatar.
Right, yeah. That is quite a world, quite a wonder.
Lots of wonder in that world. Something that's kind of become bigger too is lesser magical worlds in D&D. I've noticed as I played, when I started when I was young, it was like everything's magical, everything's mystical, everything is high magic, high crazy here. And as I've gotten older, that's dulled down significantly, and that's a shame. Magic is fun. Embrace the magic.
Yes, embrace the magic indeed. But I mean, you do have your various J.R.R. Martin worlds where it's more political intrigue, more character based. But if you have some interesting wonders of the world, you can help spark some of those character moments, some of those character feats. So,
yeah,
I mean,
and it only takes one.
Right. So, and you don't have to have a ton. So, one of the main things is thinking about the magic of the world. And so, worlds that I have always made in the past have a ton of magic because you want to be able to have something that you can't really get as much in the real world. You can't just go down to the store and get yourself your own potion. So I'm thinking some kind of high magic society, some high magic world that we have something going on.
Yeah, high magic is good, like you said, like I was saying earlier. I don't feel like it's not done enough, and there's lots of different ways to incorporate it. What about you, Kai, Steele? What are your guys' thoughts on the high magic idea?
Yeah, I think it's great. What kind of way would you want to run that? would you want it like it's running full on rampant, like there's cataclysms of magic going on because there's too much of it in the world, or like there's just enough of it where like everyone's using it? You get what I mean?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I personally like the idea of perhaps rather than magic necessarily running rampant, it's just so prevalent that it affects even the mundane things in the world, like the weather is magical, or the ground sometimes shifts in different ways due to magic, or even just the fact that magic could be used for everyday, no, day-to-day stuff, like permanent teleport circles and going different places, transportation run entirely on magic, that
Right,
sort of
your
thing.
Studio
Oh, yeah.
Ghibli worlds, essentially.
Just,
Yes.
Martha, it's raining toads again. Gotta have to take the teleporter into town.
Oh no, the no face is blocking it again. We'll have to wait. Never
Yeah,
mind.
just
Yeah. And I suppose the question is, when we're looking at this sort of world, is how all that magic's come to be, which I suppose takes us to the next letter of origins and history.
yeah, and
Ooh.
this is where I think most people tend to start. Is they're like, I got to figure out all the before stuff first. But figuring out that magical element that we talked about first will help you potentially figure out this one. Um, you need to come up with a timeline with how the world was created. Maybe there was ancient civilizations. How new is your world? Et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And it's always fun to be able to try to tie those together, because understanding how your world has its magic or has its alien features will help you define what these timelines are. One of my favorite ones that I've always loved to use, and I've actually made a couple worlds of this, is that essentially the world is from these gods. And when I say that, I don't mean that the gods built it. I mean the world is it. For example, you are on a carcass of an ancient dead god, or on the shell of an egg of a god that is to be born. So the nice thing about that is that now you have these prehistories. How did this world come to be? And the fun sparking of imagination of that. And then potential cataclysms that you have prophecies on, when the egg hatches, or when all the magic is drained from the god.
Now, I was actually going to suggest very similar, and the thing with having dead gods leaking magic into the world.
Mhm.
One idea I've always had is like having an entire pantheon of gods which have just died, leaving the world godless, but just full of magic bursting at the seams from all the
Mhm.
divine energy leaking in.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I mean, especially the nice thing about that is that if you have all the divine magic leaking into the world, you can be your own god, or you can be your own cleric. You do not have to be able to look up to any of these individuals. You are the source of your own power.
Would the
Hi,
kind of
I'm
god
Chad, High Priest of Chad. I represent Chad and all my Chadliness.
Absolutely, absolutely.
would the
I like
kind of god it would be though, emanating magic change how the magic is? So if it's an evil aligned god, like the magic would be a little bit more cursed.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
absolutely.
I like
That
that.
might even
Have it
allow you to
region-based.
create like different areas where, say, one god has died, magic flows differently or works differently in that certain area, or perhaps
Yes.
one type of magic is more powerful in this region compared to this region compared to this other one, or even the landscape could be different around there.
Right. You essentially have
Absolutely.
a giant battlefield of dead gods.
Yeah, and it's important that if you have this battlefield of dead gods, how did they get here? Was it a massive cataclysm? Like, did they have their own architecture, or is there some old structure leading around that may give us a hint as to these gods? Things like that are all important for determining this. A good tip here is if you don't want to get it complicated as we're getting here, you can always keep it simple with like a 3-age timeline. Before the fall, the age of ruling, and right now. You know what I mean? And then if you get a little magical later, maybe you got the future too, you know?
Yeah, and the nice thing about this god battlefield that we've talked about, we have that three-stage timeline. We have the before the fall, which is essentially how the world was prior to this, what the gods are trying to do. Maybe this world was already magical and all the gods were trying to vie for it and trying to take it for themselves. And then they have the cataclysm. They have that war that just inadvertently, it was mutual destruction. Everybody died. And that is how it became this essentially clumped up bodies of gods that became the world now. And then as time went on, people are discovering the now of where this magic works. Or maybe they don't even know. Maybe that's also a fun little twist that you can be able to surprise on your players, is that this is something that is not known normally by people. You just know that it's a magical world and that the gods don't listen to you. Maybe they don't know
They
why.
become so
Cool.
accustomed to it that it's just mundane now.
Yeah, I really like the idea of that, of civilization of gods and divine beings. Perhaps even we have, rather than god, like the usual story with gods, is they're all powerful and being in charge of a large group of things, like thinking Greek mythology with Poseidon and the sea and the different things on. Perhaps instead it was a civilization of gods which were all for very specific things, meaning there were hundreds of divine beings, which would then had their own massive war, leaving them all scattered out like this.
Like a Shinto belief kind of thing, where every
Yeah.
individual thing has its
Mhm.
own spirit
Yeah,
and
that
its
sort of thing.
own god.
hmm
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I like that. It's interesting because we touched on it a couple times here, so I think this is a good thing to say. I know Kai, I believe, was the one who had the idea that brought it up. Being different gods could be different regions, and that kind of works directly into our third letter. So, Kai, why don't you read into our third letter for us, the R?
Right. So the next one, regions and maps. This is where you craft your world's geographies, making those biomes, making them like flush with all the vegetation you want, or make it as dry as the harshest of deserts. So, what we're saying, guys?
Right.
Yeah, well, I suppose we've already talked about it a bit about having the gods influence the biomes that they're in. So perhaps like a god which was related with, with plant life. That would be one that is like a lush, teeming forest or jungle area. Or if it was a god of a famine, like a desert, completely barren,
Hmm.
and you could just have these small pockets of biomes all across the map, which kind of
Right.
align with the type of gods which are currently in those areas.
Yeah. And
Right.
that can also like pop up with other phenomena that happen there. So like for example, weather phenomena. If you have a god of fire or a god of earth, you can have these major earthquakes that happen constantly there, or firestorms that kick up. Or maybe you don't even have anything at all. Maybe it's a god of death, and now you're just in a graveyard or filled with
Oh, yeah.
zombies.
I like that. I was just gonna say God of Death. I could find ways to associate that with a swamp, a desert, a graveyard, icy area potentially. But if there's all these different gods, then chances I think are there's probably one area where multiple corpses have piled up that is an unexplored area right now because stuff gets wonky there. Like maybe gravity just works strange there or something.
Yes.
Etc. Other cursed things that are happening. You know, the creatures that live there have mutated strangely to adapt.
Right.
And
It's like the
that would
focal
be like
point of where this war was.
yes, and that I think would be a good like unexplored area to be like, oh, congratulations, adventurers, you're the guinea pigs. Like, and then of
Yeah,
course there'll also be like habitable areas. You gotta have cities in your world. It's important. People
Yeah.
make civilizations.
Yeah. And
Got
I
a lot
think
of
the
safe
important thing to focus on as well is that the biomes these cities are in will probably have strongly influenced how the civilizations have grown and turned into what they are, which kind of links back to origins and history. Again, showing how all these things kind of interlink.
Yeah, none of
Yeah.
them are linear.
Oh,
Mhm.
I'd also like to say, making a map isn't difficult, guys. All you need is some paper, some rice, and a pencil. Greatest things in the world.
Oh yeah, I've seen this kind of technique before. You essentially throw the rice onto the paper.
Yep,
And then trace around it, and then you have your landforms.
Hell yeah.
literally.
Yeah,
It's
and if you
great.
ever want anything if you're going for something that perhaps looks a bit more finished, there's also plenty of free tools online as well.
Mhm.
Oh yes, lots of map making software. Uh, I don't want to name drop any just in case, but there's lots of map making softwares that are free and paid out there. definitely go check them out if you're wanting something to look more crisp. But Kai is totally correct. My first map, my homebrew map, the one that I'm still playing with my friends, I couldn't figure out what to name the stuff, so I started looking around my kitchen. So my world is Taroxin, spelled Traucsin, right? That's just a jumbled up spelling of Cuisinart. The first island is
That's
Tyipoli, which is
awesome.
just Yo Play.
That is so cool.
So yeah, so I mean, steal what you got to and do what you got to make it work. Um, but definitely make sure that once you have those, you establish more into them as you go. You don't want one small area that's supposed to have, like, let's say, an icy biome feel like a jungle village. Like Steele was saying, wherever they live is going to highly affect them, especially with it being magical.
Right.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to take inspiration from how real-world civilizations have formed around certain biomes.
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, we talk about tips. It might be good to talk about like a don't. I recently talked about a story with some friends of mine where a DM in a game they were playing told them they weren't allowed any metal because they were playing in a desert, and the desert gets too hot for anything metal. So he
If
just
it's
Okay.
too hot
Yeah.
for metal, surely it's a bit too hot for you to be there.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Anyway,
You have the heat magic happening all the time. That usually is painful.
yeah.
He told them, oh, you guys can have some metal armor, but you have to wear it in shifts. They were a fighter, a rogue, and a wizard.
No, wizards have been fine then.
Yeah.
It was just
Anyway, I suppose we get a little bit off track with that. So how about we look at the next letter L for laws and logic. I mean, we've already
Yeah, so-
discussed it a little bit about how
Yeah.
these dying gods will be influencing how things work, and how we've got quite a lot of magic in the area. What are the
Yeah,
things
and
that
how
we're
we
thinking
had
of?
that little graveyard of gods where it's like anomalous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And these are all the internal consistencies. These are the things that, why does the world work as it does, both on the natural laws and just where everything is. We're talking about how the gods are real, just dead. So those bits and pieces of magic are all over the place. I like the idea that with all those gods scattered about, that each one of those biomes have its own like small consistency. So like for example, you could have a nature god essentially buried up right next to where you have either a sea god or a desert god, and they essentially the border like drastically changes. Where in like real world you wouldn't have it so that it is a stark contrast. You would usually have erosion. You would have things that would taper off and go into one biome to the next. Whereas this, it's not the same consistency. You have these magic entities that are dead and gone, and their magic is flowing through here. And now it is pretty obvious where they were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. And I think with these stark area contrasts, it would be worth like doing something where different types of magic are more powerful in certain areas. So one that is, like you were saying, around a nature god, then things that involve summoning and conjuration would probably be more powerful. Especially
especially
the
like
ones
the
of like
beasts.
like the beast. That's what I was going to say. That sort of thing.
Yeah, good idea.
Here's a question. With since we're talking about laws and logic, something that follows doesn't follow logic is magic, which is our high magic world here. So would it make sense that there was maybe a group or some rebels or maybe a solo person even living in the anomalous area who's not really as magical as they are technological? Is this a low tech because it's high magic and there's like one or two high tech areas maybe like
I mean, I definitely imagine a society where there's always been very high amounts of magic, then people will have started to focus on trying to harness said magic, which in turn invents some technology. So some areas will definitely be high tech, but I think in most civilizations in this world, you would probably have some form of technology, just not overly advanced.
Right. Because even if the world has a ton of magic in it, doesn't mean everybody can still use it. And if you have a ton of magic that is, a potential threat, people are going to try to protect themselves. And so to be able to get them back onto an even playing field, you're going to try to bring that tech up. So probably in some of these more probably barren areas or areas that are lively but don't have so much magic that you have that the heat metal magic happening in the desert where you can't even wear your own damn metal because it's so hot. You have a place where people are very technologically strong.
Yeah, I do like that. Like maybe it's just rare, and like you said, they'll have these technologies to harness these things, but anything that's been advanced, maybe is rare because it could also potentially be a plot point. Maybe someone's trying to become a new god, like a god of technology.
It could also be just where all the hubs are. All the hubs are in these more technologically sound areas because they have something to protect against these magics, these godly, wild magics that are spread out.
There you go. I like that. Like harnessing the magic in the area to form like a protective barrier or shield around the town or city itself.
Mm-hmm.
I like
Oh,
that.
definitely. Another question from me. If the magic is so prominent, would it perhaps take physical form more frequently? Would there be more elemental creatures about this sort of world?
Oh yeah, I definitely feel like they would definitely be more physical. One of my favorite aspects of worlds is when magic comes alive, both metaphysically and physically. Like exploring Eberron has one of the things I try to put in almost every world I do, which is living spells. Literally, the spells have come to life.
Ooh,
I like that. I like that.
really
And
like
that could totally be a possibility in this type of a world. I immediately was picturing something like Final Fantasy X, where like they have several creatures that look the same but are different. They have like 4 different elements of like flan or magic being. And that's what I was thinking, but I like what you guys are saying more with the living magic, the living spells, the things that shouldn't be living are.
Right. And that's why they have these high technological and safe areas, because there are living spells that are coming out. And maybe the only way that they can be able to protect themselves is that they have either found or made a dead magic zone. And so that's why they need tech, because they don't have magic here. It's dead,
Ooh.
because it's the only way to protect themselves.
Ooh, yeah, maybe perhaps instead of having technology used to harness magic, go with you said maybe make it the anti-magic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Popular anime called Black Clover out there. Deals
Mm-hmm.
kind of like that. But we've been talking about them this whole time, but honestly, again, this just shows how it's not linear. The D in our world acronym is deities and cosmology. So we're halfway through. This is the D of world, and then we still got build. But we kind of been doing that one the whole time, to be honest. Like our world is driven by the fact that we had gods.
Yeah, and I really like how Steele was talking about earlier, where this is more like a plentifully built god world. Everything has a god. Every aspect has its own god of X or Y. And so now you have a pantheon as big as a world. Like you have millions of what could be potentially gods that have influenced this area. Now there will probably be more major gods that describe the biomes, but there might be some more intricate matters that you can be able to pepper in throughout the whole thing for some of the minor ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Kai, I saw you light up a couple times. What were you saying?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with Doug. And then I was going to ask, would we still have gods living, or would they all die out?
Well, I actually had an idea for that because I do like the idea of them all being dead, but I imagine that some of the stronger willed gods, like maybe in the areas their body lay, they have a physical manifestation of their will coming back and kind of acting based off how they initially acted. A bit like a
Ooh.
ghost,
Or they
but
whispered
not
their soul into
like
an item or something?
yeah, like that sort of thing. Like maybe they're not like halfway between still alive and being a ghost, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
something that is physically there, but not all powerful. They don't have all their magic that they originally had because it's still being distributed from their actual bodies.
Yeah.
But they're strong enough mentally and with their will that they can be able to still manifest. Ooh, yeah,
And
I like
perhaps
that.
even the stronger the will, the larger the area around them is influenced by their magic. Like if you have an
Ooh.
ice, god that's making an area into an icy biome, the stronger the will of that, the living will, the more it spreads out.
Yeah.
And perhaps even you could include some areas where there's a lot of strong-willed beings still clinging desperately onto survival, that they're fighting over this area.
Building on that, we could also use people's, like just normal people's beliefs in these gods as power. It's like the more people that believe in them, the more power they have.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The thing that gives
There's
them the
a
divine spark.
Yes.
there's a cryptid in our world in real life called a tulpa, and its whole thing is like it comes to life if enough people believe it exists. Like that's its whole thing. So it's kind of a similar thing here. If enough people believe in that god, the power of that god grows there, even regardless.
And I'd
Mhm.
like to think like the gods are scared of having no believers because that's how they die out. If they're not killed by other gods, obviously.
Perhaps that even sets up a new rhetoric, because almost in everything, the gods are the ones that are worshipped. Perhaps in a world like this, despite being divine beings, they are desperate to please, and instead, rather than being worshipped, try to work alongside with the civilizations which are nearby.
Ooh.
Right.
I'm
They're almost
picturing-
worshiping their followers because they need
Yeah.
them.
I'm picturing a silver-tongued barb who gets so good at selling things to people that they start calling him like the god of sales, and he eventually becomes the god of cons because everything was a lie.
That just sounds like a normal bard.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think now that we're kind of halfway through, it might be worth doing a very quick recap with our acronym so far. What do you guys think?
Oh,
Yeah,
most
yeah,
I
definitely.
think that's a good plan.
It is
'Cause
a
after all,
long one.
this is our longest one yet. So, I guess I'll start. For W, we had wonders and weirdness, strange little quirks which make your world stand out to your players.
Next, we had O, origins and history, how your world came to be, what the timeline was, what it is, and potentially what even could happen in the future.
Next, we have R, regions and maps. This is the nitty-gritty stuff of how your world actually is and the physical aspects of it.
Next, we have L for laws and logic, and this here is how everything functions in your world. This is where you get into the nitty gritty of why it functions and how exactly.
And then that takes us back to D for deities and cosmology. As we've just gone over, is what gods are in your world, what pantheons, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely.
Yes. Now let's get into the
50% of
second
the way
half of
there.
our yep, the second half of our big acronym here. I pointed it out earlier, but again, before we jump into this, it's a good point to point it out. This will be our last acronym for a little while. We're gonna wrap it up and make it like a trilogy. Maybe we'll make it a traditional thing. Who knows? But for now, this will be our last acronym for a while, and we're gonna get into even more crazy stuff in the future. But having said that, let's go ahead and jump into B.
Beings
so-
and cultures. This is where you flesh out the races, the societies and civilizations. You can imagine whatever species you want. And I'd like to say that because we've got these gods and this magic seeping into the world, evolution takes a turn and humans have different aspects according to what place they live in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. That's like how you're able to get your more elemental beings like the Genasi in D&D traditional, or you might be able to have your Aasimar and your tieflings from a more good or more evil aligned area. And that's where they essentially came from.
Yeah, or even perhaps on civilizations which border between two zones of different gods, we might see species which are a mix of different traits of races we already know.
Oh yeah, like a Hellion kind of thing where it's
Ooh.
both like the good and evil all in one, but you have like angel wings but devil horns.
I love that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And I think one thing to look at is try not to limit it too much of saying like only this race can be from here. Like in the origin of the story, which again links back, we want to focus on this is how the races and beings and cultures came about. But at the end of the day, people will have moved around the world, traveling between the different civilizations. So you don't want to try
100%.
and limit your players and saying, "Oh, you can't play this race because you're saying you're from this civilization."
Right. And it ties back into what we were just talking about of it being mixes of various ones, where maybe your ancestor had previously come from, say, that angelic world, but now it moved over into, say, an earthly realm. And so now you have a combination of earth elements and light elements, and you're able to create a whole new thing.
Ooh.
I hate to do a callback like this to our first episode, but I'm gonna do it. The glop that we built would thrive in this world.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. Perhaps even a modified version of it where its elements were changing based off the biomes it visited.
There
Mhm.
you go.
How it
Yeah.
absorbs all the things from that biome.
Or it could even be a
Right.
creature
And
that's
then
absorbing the wills of the gods that we were talking about before. Potential plot point.
Ooh.
yeah,
Yeah.
and because it affects these people so much, it obviously would affect their culture, foods they eat, stories they tell, festivals they put on, music they play. Every aspect of that I feel like would be affected. If it's that
Mhm.
prevalent in your life, that high of a magic surrounding you, no way it doesn't penetrate into every ounce of your existence at some point.
Right. And the nice thing about trying to be able to flesh out at least a little bit of this is that this helps create the backstories for various players. You introduce your world to your the new player characters that would come in, and they get that imagination spark. And it's like, oh, well, I can take aspects from this biome and create them together, and now I have a whole new character that I want to be able to run, which is always a fun thing for a DM to see. Is now your players are invested in what you've made.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And just to add a bit of an important note here is while we're going through it, is that you don't, before you start a campaign, you don't necessarily have to have a world fully fleshed out. You
Mhm.
can just go through something like this, create key points for different things, maybe create a few key cities and regions, and then flesh it out as you go along. Because it is a lot of work to build a world from scratch. Quite often than not, you
Mhm.
Oh,
don't need to focus on every single tiny little detail, because players won't probably find out about it. If you think players are going to go this way, start working on that bit more. If players say they're going to go that way, then definitely work on that bit more. That sort of idea.
Mhm.
yeah, and
100%.
one of the good skills of being I would say a good or at least a decent DM is improv, and part of that is being able to take what your players give you and incorporate it into your world. So, like Steel was saying, it doesn't have to be fleshed out because they might do it for you. They might be like, "Oh, I wonder if
Mhm.
it does this," and then you, without saying anything, are like, "That's a good idea," and it does now.
Yeah, because remember, if there's one of you, there's usually about 4, 5, 6 of them. They're gonna come up with more ideas than you can, even
Yeah.
if they don't realize it.
Yeah, my
Yes,
favorite thing to
steal
do
them
is
all.
that a player asks me, "Was it intended to do this?" And I just say to them, "Yes, of course," as I'm scribbly writing down the idea that they just put was there. Okay, I gotta remember that.
Yeah, yeah. Your players will give you like some of the best ideas. They thrive kind of like in stress critical moments. Like they just do. People operate different under stress than they do at any other moment of their life.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of stress as well, linking back to the beings and cultures, suppose that takes us to our next letter of unrest and conflict. These cultures will be interacting with each other, and more often than not, it is probably going to turn violent in some scenarios. Different cultures will not always agree, and unfortunately, the way of man is it
Oh,
does turn into conflict.
Yeah.
I
100%.
just I just thought of a good idea, and you guys can tell me if I'm going too crazy on this or too wrong. But the world is this way because the gods have died, presumably underneath the earth at this point, or scattered about somewhere in some places. Um, what if, they've been dead for so long and they've allowed the world to be affected this way? What if like something mutated or happened, a creature, whether it's a creature or a person, that's moving the bodies and thus affecting the world itself, changing things? That would
Ooh.
cause
Yeah.
conflict
Oh,
all
yeah.
over.
Yeah, I like that idea, and that actually thinks me if there was perhaps a god of violence, god of aggression, god of war, those sort of ones, perhaps from the moving about, it causes random civilizations, even if they're peaceful usually, to suddenly go to war. Perhaps the bodies being moved around could start influencing the way the people act without even them realizing it.
Right, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because
I
we were
like that.
talking earlier about how the will of the gods might be made manifest. Still, you were talking about how that they have like this in-between manifestation there. And so that might be one of that unrest and conflict. Maybe now that they have finally have put so much into their followers that now they're getting basically a return on revenue. They are actually getting something back. And now they're able to start moving their own manifestation through and causing little bits of either the terrain or causing individuals and civilizations starting to change based on what their will is. So like that god of war is now finally has so much, people have so much aggression that now that god of war is starting to essentially march on everywhere else.
Ooh, I like
Oh,
that.
definitely. And then also for more reasons of conflict, linking back to before when we were talking about technology, if there is this kind of conflict between those which can do magic and those that can't, I imagine the civilizations which are more technologically advanced would very much be at least disagreement and unrest, if not conflict, between the civilizations which are purely focused on magic.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yes.
It's the common
Yeah.
trope of the druids versus those of civilization kind of thing, except it's the magic specific and then the technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. It's that saying, it's one bad roll that causes it. It's one bad day. It's one bad spot. Everywhere you go in this world, every region you go is going to be right on that edge where something like moving the gods' bodies and affecting it going to throw them easily. Maybe not every place, but most of them.
Yeah.
Right. And the nice thing about creating this unrest and conflict, it really helps your players help find the stakes and also helps lead into potential plot hooks and things of the future because now there's something wrong with what's happening either in your area or where your players are or where they could potentially go or hear about maybe a place in the past. So by helping create at least a couple of these pressure points, a couple of these areas that are really starting to crumble around society, it really helps your players drive forward in some faction, whether it's that maybe they're helping this problem continue, or maybe they're trying to fix it, like most heroes try to do.
Right. And this of course would affect trade, would affect economy, would affect everyone's worldview, and that alone brings you right into our very next letter, which is the I in build for items, inventions, and economy. How people survive, thrive, and trade, signature things they've made, things to get them around. So imagine like a high ice society, basically. They've got parkas, they've got snowshoes. So he changes that out with a god of summer, whoever's moving the bodies, changes that out with a god of summer. All of a sudden, these people are sweating to death, heat stroke, etc., etc.
Yeah, which I mean
Oh.
perhaps would lead to the development of magic items and technology and just general items which can very easily be swapped and changed for different environments. Because I mean, the other thing kind of didn't discuss was how often would these areas change? Would it be something that could happen over a single year? Would it be over decades? Because that would also influence what sort of items and inventions people make.
Right. And the other thing about that is that because of the fact that you have these various biomes that are specific for these gods and whatever they were made of, they have a strong source of whatever that raw material is. Like we were saying, a god of ice and things like that. Well, now you have all these cold technologies. You have all these individuals that are able to make, your ice boxes and things that help be able to keep things fresh. And then anything that would thrive there, you would only be able to find the creatures that you could be able to hunt or ride or whatever in those areas. So then the trade around all these different biomes starts becoming a little bit more tricky, leading to potentially some of that unrest if some of those areas are expanding more.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
'cause maybe some
absolutely.
areas.
And
Oh, sorry. Continue.
no, you're okay. I was gonna say more to your point, Steel. Time. I feel like the time would be affected by either the power of the gods themselves that was moved, or the amount. You know what I mean? Like if he swaps two like hot gods, like a summer god and a god of fire, out for one winter god, that'll affect it faster. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe he thinks he's helping, but there's no rhyme or logic or reason as to why he's moving which one's which. He's just like, oh no, I like this one over here. It looks pretty, and it's like, okay, well, you just put a god of plants into the area that's was a god of deaths, and now all those plants are gonna die. Like,
Right. But
Yeah,
that could also be... Oh, go on, Seal.
That's right. I was actually thinking maybe the opposite. Maybe there is logic to this. Maybe each area has its almost like seasonal cycle, where like say one area goes
Oh.
from fire, goes to nature, goes to death, goes to war, then goes to water, and then cycles back round. It does that throughout the year, which will then also change the economy, a bit like how we have farming, how we have different crops, which are only available during different times of the year.
Oh,
Ooh,
I like
yeah.
that.
I
Especially
do too, actually.
because
It's way better than my idea.
it's a deific season. That's how
Yes,
the
that's why.
magic
Yeah.
changes.
Mhm.
That'd be cool.
Yes.
And perhaps even each region has its own cycle, which still means each region needs to trade with each other. However, then it still adds the depth of the economy with how they can change what they need and what they use.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like a region that starts in life and then goes to growth and then goes to death and then goes to rot and then comes back to life and just keeps the cycle going. And then you have those various regions changing to be able to match that. You have the life stuff to be able to help bring healing potions and things. Death, various swamps are cropping up. The rot being able to be more of that mulch and growing stuff because now everything is decaying.
Which that actually makes me think of an idea of perhaps as we were talking before about technology being the anti-magic, creating dead zones. Perhaps we even have one region which is more advanced in technology, has found a way to stop this cycle, and they've found a way to keep it on the exact one they want to stay as, or even they remove the effects entirely so it has no sort of magical changes.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So it's
And that's
almost
what-
government controlled, the weather.
Yes. Basically, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I like
Maybe that would even then, maybe then that would create even more conflict between different cultures, linking back to our previous letter, because some countries might see it as unnatural or wrong to stop this natural cycle, which has been going on for, well, hundreds and hundreds of years in this world.
It turns out it's
100%.
just a creature the whole time.
It was just a dog behind the door.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking about going back hundreds and hundreds of years, the things that help bring this society to life goes right into our next letter, L. Legends and stories, the rumors and prophecies, the various myths of why it is like this. There may be these cycles, but how much do the players know? How much do the people know? How much is actually able to evolve over time? See, these are the things that help make just stories into myths and legends.
I feel
I
like
don't-
the world we've built with the magic seeping would help a lot with this, especially with like local ghost stories and that, where magic
Oh,
comes
yeah.
to life.
Mm-hmm.
And
thing-
go ahead, Steel.
Oh yeah, one thing I also like to hear of is quite a lot of times in these worlds you find out from like these different religions that of different things, different gods, and it is just true. One thing I've always liked the idea of is these cultures, they've all interpreted these stories differently, what they've observed differently, so they each have different reasons, which may or may not be anywhere near to what the actual reason is, and allow the players to sort of discover how different civilizations have reacted to these changes and how they've grown to understand it. So sometimes they'll hear stories about these gods which are extravagant and mighty, and then others which are full of despair and sorrow, even if it's about the same gods or same story, or even if it's about something which never actually happened.
I
Yeah.
like that.
So
Um,
like a god of what could be destruction for some is a god of victory for others.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
history is written by the winners.
Mhm.
Very true.
I like the idea too that this could be affected straight up by the fact that we said something's moving these bodies, which changes the season, so they have this cycle. So it'd be funny if, like, for whatever reason, there was a gap of time where, say, one of the creatures died or something, and like it hadn't happened for a while here, so a new species of animal moved in, and then when the new creature came and picked up, that animal moved away, and now there's legends and stories of whatever that animal is here, but it's like wildly out of proportion in the area that it's no longer exists. They're like, oh, it was lucky and it brought prosperity and good luck, and it's really just because the season changed.
Oh, yeah. Or perhaps
could-
even there's like a god which purposely makes people forget things. Like, as the will of this god travels through different areas, it makes people start misremembering the stories, misremembering the legends, to the point where after a few
Ooh.
hundred years, where it maybe comes through every 300, the stories change bit by bit, and over many, 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 many centuries, it's just become something completely different.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like the game
could-
of telephone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly like that.
It could be that there was one season that happened here and people remember it, but because of either the other influences from the surrounding biomes or maybe because there are more stronger wills, that one season, prosperity, let's say, died off. And now everybody remembers, okay, next season, that's when it's going to be prosperous. Okay, it didn't happen this season. Next season. Okay, didn't happen. Next season. And they just keep having this myth and legend of, okay, this is the area of prosperity, but it will only happen if blank is going to occur.
Oh,
Oh.
gotcha. Yeah, they keep trying to find any way to make the logic fit.
Right. But they may not have a logic anymore because whatever God was there has essentially had their will pushed out.
Uh,
And that can link greatly back to our previous letter of, again, unrest and conflict. Another reason of these different countries, so at this point they'll be remembering things differently, these different legends and stories and reasons for different things happening. It could lead to a lot of argument between them about what the true story is.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. What?
That kind of stuff
Uh,
could lead to self-conflict, though, like within the nation.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Civil War.
Well, especially if they're, like we were saying, that prosperity was one of the seasons, and season after season it doesn't come back. Well, now they're going to start looking at why it might be, and people like to point fingers. It's your fault that we don't have prosperity anymore, and then trying to rectify that in any way possible.
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you have groups of people coming into the country or like
Mhm.
nation, and then you'd never get that kind of season again.
I
100%.
definitely think whatever creature or person or thing that we have that's moving these bodies too, I feel like the reason our adventurers are probably investigating is because it's different than usual. So this one's either sick, corrupted, crazy, something.
Mm-hmm.
Being influenced somehow to make things not usual. So people will be like, oh, this season's going to be this. And then it's something they've never experienced before, ever.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I love that a lot. And also, another important thing to focus on is legends usually have something physical that will come along with them. Perhaps even magical items or magical creatures which link to the stories that the players can find.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. And I know that people who flesh out their backstories can be like, oh, I grew up believing in the legend of this monster or this myth, like the boogeyman or something, and they'll be like, so my character is instinctively fearful of that or something, and you can use that as well.
Mm-hmm. Always fun to poke at your players with some of those ones. But one of the nice thing about being able to look at these legends and stories that happen is, you're right, Steele, there is usually something physical. Sometimes that involves things like ruins, towers, lairs. Maybe there is a secret vault of treasure that people are going for, which leads us right into the last letter, D. dungeon hooks, and adventure seeds. Little things that help your players want to explore, giving them the little carrots to be able to seek out in your various worlds. Or in this case, the various biomes from these gods.
Ooh,
Absolutely. And I feel like since we're focusing a lot on how these different worlds are influenced by the dead gods, is that whatever dungeon, like world building area, like ruins, no matter what is where you're going, if it's been there for a long time, the magic will have seeped into it for quite a while, and it would probably have been changed to match the area as well. Perhaps having special monsters, special items, special ways that it is built.
Mm-hmm. Having
I
those
like the
various
idea
themes.
of going back to what we said earlier about the changing seasons, how the dungeons might change as well, along with these seasons.
Ooh, yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. Like traps could change, layouts could change, different ways it functions could change.
Yes.
Yeah, the different monsters who inhabit it could change as well.
Or you could even get living dungeons.
Oh,
Ooh,
yeah.
like like almost like a worm burrowing between the different biomes, changing as it goes along.
I like that
Whew.
because I picture something like an acidic lake, but then in the winter it's just ice, so you walk on it.
Mm-hmm. Or
Yes.
perhaps a
And let-
lake like that where when it does freeze over, it also lowers slightly, revealing the entrance to a dungeon.
Yes.
Right.
And this
Ooh,
is when
yeah.
people go gather rare materials from it to sell and
Mhm.
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You could
But if you spend
also
too long down there, it gets hot, and then some of the lake boils, and it sends fumes and vapors down.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to suggest something similar to that of like maybe the season that it does open up is a very short season, perhaps it only lasts a week, but is very extensive, so players have to be very mindful of how long they're spending down there.
Right.
Yes.
You can't dungeon delve for months on end. You have to be in and out.
Also, I suppose these dungeons, these living dungeons, could even link back to our civilizations. Perhaps you even have a area, town, or city which is built around harvesting this living dungeon for its materials and how it grows different things throughout the year.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I like that.
One of my favorite games I've ever played is called Moonlighter, where essentially what you do is that you're a shopkeep and you spend the day selling various items, but at night you go get those items in the dungeon that always changes. And so you would have a ton of these moonlighters at night going out as adventurers to be able to go into these dungeons to get whatever season's material is, on season essentially, to be able to bring back for folks to be able to sell off and get.
Yeah, and if we're going back to that thing is moving the bodies, causing new things to happen, different things to happen that we've never seen before, this living dungeon thing also makes sense because maybe it's a political thing, even like the adventurers get contracted by a high up in the government, whether that's the king himself or a duke or whatever it is, or even just a job board to go investigate why nobody's come out of this dungeon from this routine harvesting they do, and it's because a whole new monster moved in.
Ooh, yeah, I like that. Perhaps that could even send the players out because if they are living around these dungeons, around these living dungeons, and which are constantly having people going in, the basic adventure is going to become a bit of a menial job. It's no longer going to be, well, an adventurer. So perhaps the players could be ones which do special tasks, specialize in taking out changes which were unexpected or dealing with them during the more dangerous seasons.
Oh.
100%.
So what's the opposite of a shapeshifter? Because that's all about changing.
A golem who's
Oh,
immutable.
Yeah, an
I was
immutable
going to say
being.
anti-shifter.
Ooh, an idea I really like as well, that I've just thought of, is where a high technological society uses these dungeons as a entertainment source.
Oh, yeah. Like a gladiatorial thing.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
So
I mean,
there's different teams,
I
and
like
whoever
that.
gets to a certain floor or like the top of a tower wins.
Since they're
yeah,
high
I
tech,
mean,
I picture them wearing like GoPros and stuff like that, and they're recording. Like everyone else is like a regular adventure team, but you come across these guys who are recording it. Like,
see, I had a similar thought. So that, well, basic idea, but change bit is with living dungeons of harnessing them. Perhaps instead they turn them into weapons as well, since we're talking about them moving around.
Oh,
Ooh, I like that. Like a non-sentient mimic.
Yeah, well, maybe not even a mimic. Like, maybe these things do have sentience, like very basic sentience, no, but they're still being able to be harnessed, like with the technology, being able to controlled and guided.
Okay.
I got that.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I like that. Where they can directly influence the outcome, the shape, what
Yeah.
is going to grow. I got
Or
you.
perhaps even where it reappears, because we were talking briefly about how these dungeons could reappear across different areas. It could be
Ooh.
like used as a fast teleportation of large armies. Because if you had a dungeon which could hold a few hundred people, if that suddenly appeared in the middle of a city, then that would be devastating for war.
I love that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do too. That's actually really cool. There's definitely going to be a god of dungeons in here.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
what is the Minotaur but a guardian of dungeons? So the god of the dungeon is going to be the god of Minotaurs.
But with that, we've pretty much built our world here.
Yeah.
We've given lots of lore, lots of reasoning, lots of origins, history. We've talked about the stories. We've talked about how we'll get our adventurers involved. I mean, is there any like last little bits you guys are thinking of throwing into this?
I mean, I was just gonna say, just looking over all we've done, like we have looked at a lot of information here, and we're still nowhere near like a fully completed world, which goes back to what we were saying before. You don't need a fully fleshed out world to start a game. With this, if you got it all written down, had fleshed out a little bit more, you would have a world which is ready to go.
100%. Like, just need a couple nouns for this. So they need a couple of cities of some of these god names. But we've already created like a world that has a good idea at its core and that people want to explore. I mean, hell, we've described how the people are exploring it just to be able to find the resources that they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Are we
if you're
gonna?
worried about creating names, there's always name generators online. Some people say it's cheating a bit. Names are not
Speaking
the
of
things you should be
names,
focusing on.
No, they're not. But do we want to name our world?
Ooh, what should we name it,
our
guys?
world. Putting us on the spot like that. No,
Yeah,
we
of
can't
course.
just call it Armored Giraffe Studios.
No.
I've got an idea.
Like-
Insert name here, version 2.0.
2.1 2.1 at this point with all we've done.
I propose Earth the sequel. No, just
Earth 2 Electric Boogaloo.
So one thing that pops to mind is that we're talking about how all these various elements for these various deities come together. I'm a big proponent of using things and smashing them together, cobbling together names that usually describe what you're doing. So the thing that comes to mind is the Diamental.
Oh,
Diamental.
The Diamental.
I like that.
The deities with the element, with the various elements coming to them.
I was trying to think of something similar. I was thinking of like murd, like murder, death, like merd, like murd, and then I was like pantheon, but all I kept getting was Mirtheon, and I wasn't really sure about that. So,
I think our world should be named Diamentia. It's like deity.
Diamentia.
There we
That
go.
sounds, Diamentia,
Yes.
like that one. That one sounds like a land itself.
Yes. So we created here for you guys the world of Diamentia, and it only took the four of us like an hour.
Yeah.
An hour to create that. Which just goes to show how easy it is to get started on this. I mean, lots of people when they start in a world, they find it a bit daunting to look at creating worlds, but we just proved how easy it was there.
Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Don't let Dungeons and Dragons scare you. It's a fun storytelling narrative experience, and it's supposed to be fun. That's the
also
number
like to say,
one
if
rule.
you're not having fun, that's against the rules.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. Exactly.
And then also one more point from me. If you ever have anything that you're not sure how to explain how it works, just say magic crystals. Magic crystals is like the duct tape of world building. Can't explain why this works? Magic crystal. Can't
Magic
explain why this
crystal.
piece of technology is powered? Magic crystal. Solution to everything.
But
Yeah,
wait,
and with our
there's
world,
more.
with our world, you get one other thing. You can have god crystals.
Exactly. You
God
can just say,
crystal.
oh yeah, there's this god of insert whatever problem is here that's not making this work.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Random bullshit go.
Yes,
Mhm.
And the
exactly.
bullshit
Thank you, Moon
go.
Knight.
Remember, if you present it confidently to the players, they will assume that it was well thought out and made.
Exactly.
Even
Like
if
we
you're
said, rip
scribbling
their
behind
ideas.
the
It's
screen
okay.
all of the notes.
But this will basically wrap up our acronym trilogy. We're going to have some interesting stuff for you guys next time. But let's go ahead and one more time. It was a big one. It was a long one. Let's go through our acronym one more time. Steelers, start us off again.
Absolutely. So we're going all the way back to the beginning with W for wonders and weirdness, the little quirks, the strange little artifacts about your place, what makes it special and stand out to the players. Get them hooked.
And then going right on to the O, the origins and history, like we were mentioning before. What happened before this time? What is happening now? And what could potentially happen in the future?
Going on to R, regions and maps. This is what your players will be doing most of the time. Traveling these cities, exploring the forgotten ruins.
Now we have L for laws and logic. This dictates why your world works the way it does. Yeah, magic's an easy answer, but how does that magic work? And that's where this comes in.
Which then takes us to deities and cosmology, pantheons, planes, divine drama. Are they absent, cruel? Who knows? That's what you need to find out.
Mm-hmm. And then going past the 50% mark, going right into the second part of B, beings and cultures. In this world, who are the characters in it? What are the different races, societies, and civilizations that populate this world? And where can we go from there?
The next U, unrest and conflict. What's happening in the world? What politics are going on? Are there wars? Looming monsters? Ancient curses? Who knows?
And that takes us right into our second I. No, it's not. Just kidding. It's our first I. Jokes. Yep. There's two I's here because it stands for items, inventions, and economy. How do people survive here? What do they trade here? Is it gears, relics, technologies that they have, etc., etc.?
Then L, legends and stories, the golden thread which links all the world together. The little stories which explain how things happened, or maybe how they didn't happen and the cultures seem to believe they did.
And then finally wrapping it all up, the second D, the dungeon hooks and adventure seeds, the things that your players want to go explore, the things that help pull them along to be able to tell this overarching story, the various ruins and towers, the political intrigues, the threats that loom overhead.
Yes. And we have there's two L's and two D's, not two I's, so sorry about that. But
To be fair, with all of us here, there are four
Yeah.
eyes. I'm an eye, Steele's an eye, Kai's an eye.
And I must say, great save, Nate, great save.
Thank you.
It was all intentional, just like being
yeah.
a DM, knowing exactly what we were doing.
Oh yeah, it wasn't saving it, he planned it from the beginning, guys.
Exactly. See, I knew you guys would catch on.
We're all here playing chess, and somebody's playing 6D checkers over there.
Oh no, he's playing 5D chess with interdimensional time travel.
If we're being honest, I'm playing shoots and ladders. But I hope you guys don't play around when you tune in to listen to us here at TTRPGiraffe, brought to you by Armored Giraffe Studios. Make sure you keep on the lookout for us, and make sure to go ahead and follow the Patreon and the Discord, and those links will be in the bio. In the comments. Oh, jeez. So used to saying
down
in the
below.
bio. Down below. In the comments. They're like a bio. You know, you got it. You understand.
It's the bio for the episode.
You guys know what you're doing.
Yep, it's
Thank
been
you for
having.
listening.
Yep.
All right.